can't get my kid to drink medicine. I gotta like mix it in his orange juice. For real, I gotta like literally like, here, drink orange juice because it's good for you. It's vitamin C, and you know, because he'll literally like not drink his medicine like at all.
Stephan Sterns is a walking enigma, a prophetic Peter Pan, as it were, who chose to arrive at a Halloween party on October 26, 2009, when he was 23 years old, dressed as a convict wearing a bright orange uniform with inmate numbers displayed over his heart. He held a phallic-shaped item near his loins. Sterns was already throwing out obvious clues of the kinds of activities he liked to engage in as a young adult male. As viewers who saw the original full photo on JLR Investigates Twitter page realized, linked to below. I can't show you on YouTube what Sterns is holding in his left hand, but he should have been more careful of the image he presented and actions he undertook. Nearly 15 years later, Sterns sits in the Osceola County Correctional Facility as a 37-year-old man wearing real inmate attire, real ID number 1419688. He might face the death penalty if the charges in this case travel the direction some viewers predict. Why did Sterns turn out this way? The problematic question is this: why would a man with no criminal history harm his girlfriend's precious 13-year-old daughter, Madeline Sophia Soto? I had to discover what makes Sterns tick. I purchased various background checks, paid for official court documents, and went on a deep Google dive through multiple public court records across the country to learn more about this mysterious man with a limited digital footprint, at least on the light web. Perhaps as we speak, investigators are uncovering more sick secrets about Sterns via the dark web and through his secretive cell phone. My deep journey into Sterns' past unfurls a boy who bounced from Illinois to Georgia to Southern California to Florida, just as he explained to an officer during his recent transport on March 1st, 2024, prior to Maddie's body being found. My research was fruitful. Although I ran into some brick walls, including shuttered MySpace pages and police departments, with no responsive records, other doors of information were opened wide to me. I hit pay dirt when I purchased a PDF full of the divorce drama involving Sterns' mom and dad, and how that upbringing may have shaped the type of man he became, especially after their separation seemed to result in a non-finalized divorce. You're about to hear what Sterns' mom said about her family on a poodle podcast.
I first started with standard poodles in California, and I knew nothing about them. We moved, and I lost all that contact in California, so I started over again in Orlando.
What court records uncovered about adultery and a would-be divorce, plus Sterns' multitude of traffic violations, his credit card lawsuit, and more revelations that brought me to a conclusion of who Sterns really is. Let's take this journey into the history of an only child, a mama's boy raised on a farm and at times in homes valued at more than $1 million, who morphed into a teenage boy breaking speed limits in a fancy yellow Mitsubishi, losing his driver's license, transforming into a 20-something-year-old man who still needed his dad to pay his fines. We'll travel from his troubled past, devolving to his more troubling present, discussing the recently released in-car camera video footage released from the Osceola County Sheriff's Office, and the response I just received regarding my request for Madeline Soto's autopsy report. Finally, we'll finish with what the future potentially holds for the Disney-themed life of this childlike man who never grew up in the worst way possible. His past. I'm going to try and keep the names of Sterns' mom and dad on the down low as I tell this story, even though their information is readily findable on social media and in public court documents. like in his parents' 91-page divorce document PDF, which I've linked to below. It is not my desire to place any blame on anyone who is not the alleged perpetrator in this tragic case. According to what Sterns' mother wrote in her divorce petition from his dad in 1996, Sterns was born a male in Aurora, Illinois, of all places. After that, he bounced around quite a bit for a young child, apparently spending more time with his mom than his dad, as his mother suffered from various physical ailments. I've been all over, Sterns explained. I was born in Illinois, lived in Georgia, Florida, and California in rotation for most of my life.
I've been all over. I was born in Illinois, lived in Georgia, Florida, and California all the time. In rotation for most of my life.
Born in 1986, Sterns was only 5 years of age when he lived with his mom in Lilburn, Georgia for 5 months, from May to October in 1991. Then he lived in Yorba Linda, California for the year that followed, strictly with his mom as they endured Sterns' dad's busy work life in sales. The elder Sterns was often on the road, as described in the marital separation drama To Come. From February 1992 to September 1995, Sterns lived with both his mom and dad in Sarasota, Florida. Soon after, the adolescent Sterns would be living with his mom again in Yorba Linda, California. When Sterns spoke with Officer Cabrera about country music, he said, "I can relate to some of it. I grew up on a farm. Horses." Sterns said, "Georgia. It was a love-hate thing." It sounds like Sterns said he was happy with the horses but had to clean a dozen stalls every day. He was a 10 or 11-year-old kid, but Sterns doesn't mention all of the separation and would-be divorce drama that his mom and dad were going through at that time, nor its impact on him as the sole progeny. Did all this melee make Sterns feel like he lost his childhood? Did Sterns experience stunted emotional growth that made him immature and childish in a dangerous way? Keep watching to see why I believe that he is emotionally stunted, as exemplified through the pop psychology Peter Pan syndrome. Instead of unburdening his soul and confessing his crimes to Cabrera right then and there on camera, after all, investigators were still searching for Maddie at that point, Sterns regaled the officer with a story from his boyhood of wheeling horse manure in a wheelbarrow down a ramp and accidentally tipping himself into the dumpster full of horse poop.
I can relate to some of it. I grew up on a farm.
You grew up on a farm?
Yeah. Horses.
Wow.
Acreage in Georgia. It was a love-hate thing. It was great having horses and living on that land. And sometimes we pick, a dozen stalls every day. As a 10, 11-year-old kid. Once pushed a wheel, we had this dumpster with a ramp that we pushed the wheelbarrows full of horse poop on it too. Until we pushed it and the wheelbarrow tipped over and took me right with it into the dumpster full of horse poop. Luckily, it's just mostly grass and hills, so it's not.
But it stinks. Well, why did you work there? Was it like your family's farm?
Yeah, it was my family.
So you're from Georgia?
Sterns said, "It was great having horses, but sometimes cleaning a dozen stalls every day when you're just a 10 or 11-year-old kid." He trailed off, obviously intimating that it was too much work for a child. "I once pushed a wheelbarrow. We had this dumpster with a ramp that we pushed the wheelbarrows full of horse poop into. One time I pushed it and the wheelbarrow tipped over and took me right with it into the dumpster full of horse poop. Luckily, it was mostly grass in there." When the cop seemed to pretend to commiserate with Sterns, complaining about his hard work on the farm, he asked, "Was it a family farm?" "I lived there. Yeah, it was family," Sterns answered. It seems that Sterns would continue to metaphorically throw himself into deep doo-doo ever since. Ironically, when Sterns began to speak of his love of classical music, he waxed nostalgic about taking a field trip in school to listen to the classics. He noted that it was not only effective to have playing in the background when he studied, but that it was also pretty emotional. He called classical composers some of the first rock stars, mentioning Bach and Beethoven.
What kind of music you like? You like classical music?
Sometimes.
Huh. You're the first person that's ever said classical music. Yeah. Classical. Like what? Like give me like a classical song or
Exact names, but some of them are Beethoven. Some occasional Bach.
you're the first one. I've never had anyone tell me classical music. And I actually like classical music. I do. I've never been to like an orchestra or like a concert like that. I've never been to one.
I think I went to my school field trip once and it's amazing. Something about having classical music going in the background, reading and studying, it's just peaceful. Also, very emotional.
Yeah. You're actually right.
Divorce drama. Sterns's mom wrote in court documents that she married his dad on August 16, 1980, and they were separated on December 22, 1995, more than 15 years into the marriage. There was only one child. The issue of our marriage. She oddly referenced her son in her legal documents and named Stephan Michael Sterns, born April 25, 1986. At the time of her divorce filing, the young Sterns was 9 years of age. His mother wrote that she resided in the state of Florida until approximately September 2, 1995, when, quote, our son and I retired to Yorba Linda, California to reside. I returned to California for the purpose of having surgery on both feet and physical therapy following surgery. It was my belief when I arrived that I would live here for approximately 1 year in order to sufficiently recover. Since that time, I have discovered that our marriage has ended, and as a result, I intend to continue to make Southern California the permanent residence for my son and me. End quote. Isn't it odd that Sterns and his mom moved all the way to California away from his dad in Florida just so she could recover from surgery? Well, her divorce documents note that she was living with her own mother, her stepdad, and her young son in the same home, so perhaps she needed the help in raising him. Plus, she would go on to explain just how often her husband was gone from home due to his job. She wrote, on approximately December 14th, 1995, my husband telephoned me and told me that he felt that we should separate because he was unhappy in the marriage. I asked him why, at Christmas time, he had decided to inform me that he wanted to end our marriage. He indicated to me that he did not feel that there was any appropriate time to end a marriage. I discovered he has been leading a double life, one part of which he has kept completely secret from me. I discovered that he has had an ongoing relationship with a woman he refers to as Pooh. I have found notes and cards passed between the two of them. A book which was gifted to him by Pooh, entitled The Art of Sexual Ecstasy, references to a commemoration of and celebration of a 15th anniversary between the two of them, and interestingly, a necktie with a wedding design consisting of wedding cakes, wedding rings, etc. I do not know if he and Pooh are supposedly married, and if so, if this marriage occurred prior to or subsequent to our marriage. Moreover, in looking back through bank statements and canceled checks for the past approximately 1.5 years, I have discovered that he has spent excessive amounts of money traveling, an average of $800 a month in monthly telephone bills, etc. In addition, I have found ads in his personal items advertising pornographic videos, dildos, etc. I believe that discovery may be extensive in order to determine if he gifted this woman with our community assets. I am astounded and amazed. I had absolutely no idea that he was living this existence parallel to our marriage. His employment has been in sales, and as a result, he has been required to travel a great deal of the time. In the last 6 months of our marriage, he was gone every week, at least for 1/2 of the week. Prior to that time, he usually traveled during the week and was only at home on the weekends, if he came home at all. Wow, Sterns' mom really unloads within those divorce documents. And I can't help but wonder if the younger Sterns isn't like his dad, at least in terms of leading a secret double life that he kept from his own partner, Jennifer Soto. Indeed, a web search of Sterns' dad reveals he began his sales and marketing career with Fortune 500 companies, such as the Campbell Soup Company and Quaker Oats, 20 years earlier before entering real estate. Sterns' mom continued, I am presently receiving disability as my only income. I am unable to work due to the fact that I have limited mobility and a great deal of pain as a result of foot surgery that I underwent in 1990. Since the surgery that caused the damage to my feet, I have had 4 major surgeries in order to try and correct the damage. I will be going into the 5th major surgery soon after the first of the year. After the surgery, it is expected that I will have to undergo physical therapy for at least 1 year. During this rehabilitation time, I will be barely mobile, and I do not even know when I will be fully ambulatory again. As the result of the fact that I am unable to work and he is employed, earning in excess of $60,000 per year, I respectfully request that the court order him to pay child support and spousal support to me according to guideline, and the fact that I believe he has the ability to pay. I further respectfully request that the court order that he advance $4,000 in attorney fees and $1,000 in costs to enable me to maintain this action. Divorcing the divorce. Sterns vs. Sterns was filed on December 29, 1995, listed with a type as nullity with child, indicating that someone wanted the marriage annulled. Sterns' mom showed up in court on March 25, 1996, with her attorney. Sterns' dad did not show up, nor did any lawyer represent him. Therefore, Sterns' mom was awarded sole physical custody and his dad given visitation rights. I can't help but wonder if the young Sterns grew resentful, having to likely attend to his mother's disability needs, with his dad often absent. The divorce judgment was listed as final. However, the 91-page Orange County document explains why Sterns' mom's attorney withdrew after being retained on December 27, 1995. Sterns' mom allegedly owed her lawyer money and eventually refused to respond to the attorney's calls. In paperwork filed on September 29, 1997, Sterns' mom's attorney tried to track her down at an address where she lived in Roswell, Georgia, to pay off her balance owed in excess of $2,500, but was unsuccessful. The lawyer wrote about how diligently and faithfully she had worked for Sterns' mom in court, only to be ghosted and slighted of her fees. Apparently, this heated divorce was never finalized. Perhaps Sterns' mom and dad changed their minds and attempted to live in wedded bliss, maybe for the sake of their son. Indeed, Sterns' mom speaks as though she is still married to his dad to this day. In the Poodle People podcast episode dated October 21st, 2023, she spoke of Sterns' dad asking her what she wanted for their 25th wedding anniversary. which had already long come and gone by the time she did that interview. If they survive this current crisis their son has thrown them into, the Sterns will celebrate 44 years of marriage on August 16th, 2024. She calls Sterns' dad a good husband, not ex-husband who did the right thing by writing out a check for the poodle she wanted. She didn't hint at any of the drama that had unfolded decades earlier. Therefore, the Superior Court of California in the County of Orange divorce filing on December 29, 1995, when Sterns was only 9 years old, was likely abandoned. Indeed, his mom, who was 43 years old at the time she filed for divorce from his dad, lists her son, by then 10 years of age, as the only child listed in that document.
I called my husband and he had asked me for what I wanted for my 25th anniversary. And he said, would you like a new ring? Would you like some jewelry? And I said, no, I want a poodle. A big poodle. Not a little
answer.
Poodle. I want a confirmation poodle. And I called him when she called me, and he met me there. He was there writing the check out before I even got out of my car.
Oh, wow.
Good husband. Diesel has been in training to help me with my mobility assistance. I have 2 false knees, and they don't like lateral work.
Oh, yeah.
I start walking, and I veer off to the side and kind of look like perhaps I've been tippling a little bit at lunch. And he kind of comes up and snugs up to my knee and says, "Straighten up, Mom. Don't embarrass."
The money multiplies. It's worth it to note that Sterns' mom was 34 years old when she gave birth to him, and his dad approximately 35 years of age. They would be considered somewhat older parents in the 1980s, more established than teen-aged parents would have been financially. Also, as an only child, Sterns would tend to get the lion's share of attention from his mom and dad, both pleasant and wrathful. He would also be the beneficiary of their growing wealth. "We're real estate people," Sterns' mom would tell the podcast in 2023, explaining their ups and downs in the market after the collapse of the industry in 2005. Indeed, Sterns is still listed as a real estate agent in Kissimmee, Florida on LinkedIn as of this recording. However, due to her health issues, back in the day, Sterns' mom asked for child support based on her husband's then $5,281 gross monthly income as a self-employed man. Keep in mind, this was 1996, when Sterns' mom sought child support for him, so $5,200 in 1996 is equal to about $10,400 in 2024, meaning Sterns' dad alone brought in annually what would be considered a healthy $125,000 or so these days. Add to that the $16,800 in disability that Sterns' unemployed mom claimed during the last 12 months in 1996, which is equivalent in purchasing power to nearly $32,000 today, and that's an even healthier combined $157,000 yearly salary. Sterns' dad probably realized the adage that it's cheaper to keep her when he remained married to Sterns' mom and increased his take-home pay. Making the switch from being a household with a dad who was a solo breadwinning salesman to a brood of realtors was apparently a boon for the Sterns family, as witnessed by the current $1 million-plus values of some of the homes they've resided in. But was the real estate market really the source of income for the younger Sterns? Or will investigators find a more lucrative and sinister source of his salary? Somehow it seems Sterns' mom and dad stayed together and eventually settled in Florida to raise their son. Maybe they felt a bit of guilt for putting their only child through the divorce drama and sought to lavish him with material things in order to make up for the trouble. Whatever he was feeling, the young Sterns took advantage of his pole position and put his pedal to the metal in Florida and promptly ran straight into the law of the land. Sterns, as a Florida teenager and 20-something-year-old with a crash, traffic tickets, and lawsuits. We are learning more about the early years of Sterns beyond what he portrayed on Facebook when he wrote that he hails from Lake Forest, California. Lake Forest is a city in Orange County and is considered one of the wealthiest communities in the United States. Maybe that's why Sterns chose that location to brag about on social media as part of his heritage, instead of simply Orange County, Florida. The home address attributed to the Sterns is worth more than $1.5 million right now in Lake Forest, only a half an hour drive or less to the Pacific Ocean. It's no wonder Sterns told the officer transporting him about the beautiful beaches of California and the cold water of the Pacific, which can cause muscles to seize up after 30 minutes. Sterns also mentioned nearby Laguna Beach and Newport Beach, other wealthy areas close to Lake Forest. It's clear Sterns never lost his love for Southern California and marijuana, as witnessed by his MySpace handle dubbed SoCal 420. Too bad the carousel of photos that Sterns had uploaded to the old social media site are no longer visible. We are left only with entries of Sterns posting about my first beer. Maybe Sterns hoped he could stay in California forever, but by the time he turned 18, he was already living in Florida and getting in trouble.
Lived in Georgia, Southern California, Florida. Southern California was nice.
San Diego area?
A little further north than that, towards Laguna Beach. Somewhere more like Newport.
California is nice. I've been there twice. Nice
To visit. Weather's always really nice. At least when I lived there, the locals are really nice too. Easy to make friends, easy to meet people. The beaches are just amazing. Blue Pacific water, cold as cold can be.
Oh, yeah. There's no warmth to that water at all.
Swim for about 30 minutes until your muscles start to seize up.
California and Florida money problems in 2004, market crash, and poodle breeding in 2005. According to the Superior Court of California in the County of Orange, a civil collections case titled California Business Bureau versus Sterns was filed on March 30th, 2004. Listed are Sterns' parents, who will still remain nameless throughout this video for the sake of privacy concerns. A request for entry of default was filed by California Business Bureau, Incorporated on September 16, 2004. The case was disposed through a verdict, settlement, dismissal, or other means with a disposition of default judgment by the clerk. Whereas Sterns' parents were having some sort of business problems in California, court records from Orange County show that Sterns has no criminal or traffic violation history there. It was only after Sterns relocated to Florida with his parents that his traffic violations, one of them causing a crash, took place. Along with his small claims court problems, money problems would follow his family to Florida. On May 12, 2004, the Sterns entered into a contract with the Golden Bear Club at Keens Point, a private country club offering a Jack Nicklaus-designed golf course, as well as a luxury clubhouse. The club was only a couple of miles away from their home. Within a few years, the club would claim the family owed them nearly $30,000. Interestingly, the young Sterns is listed as a garnishee in this lawsuit next to his dad's name and a nominal amount of indebtedness. Sterns' mom's name has more than $10,000 listed next to hers in that lawsuit as leftover debt. But more on that later. Sterns was apparently a country club kid, an 18-year-old enjoying all the privileges of the 18-hole golf course, the clubhouse, dining room, 4 tennis courts, the swimming pool, and the fitness center. He was already zipping around town that year in a bright new 2003 yellow 4-door Mitsubishi car, as future speeding tickets would note. Sterns' traffic infractions began appearing in the Orange County Clerk Court records when he was only 18. His first traffic violation happened on July 27, 2004. Court records say that Sterns had an expired temporary tag, and he elected to pay the civil penalty of $68.50. Only a few months later, on November 30th, 2004, the 18-year-old Sterns was in trouble again with his second infraction, a moving violation for failure to obey a traffic control device. He was traveling 45 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone, and he wouldn't slow down or learn his lesson about obeying the law for many years, if ever. Creepily, the teen-aged Sterns received this ticket at Park Avenue and Main Street, not far from Windermere Elementary School. As 2005 arrived, Sterns' mom began breeding poodles and her son kept ignoring speeding signs. "We're all realtors," Sterns' mom explained to the Poodle People podcast hosts. She mentioned that when the real estate market collapsed in 2005, the same year she began showing dogs, she didn't have enough money to finish her pursuits. Despite her husband writing a big check for a big poodle as her 25th anniversary present that year, she didn't mention that her son had such a heavy foot on a gas pedal.
And she said, sure, she'd come and evaluate him. Well, in between that time, and between those 3 days that I was supposed to see her, my husband had a massive heart attack.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
He lived.
Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, good.
But he was in the hospital, and I wouldn't leave the hospital. And he told me, "Look, you've got the appointment with Ann. Go take him." So I went and took him. Since let's see, when did I first breed her? 2005.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, 2005. So, and I don't breed them after they're 5. I don't consider them my ATM.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm glad those folks have your progeny to help them with their everyday life. That's wonderful.
Well, it's not just that. They don't have to, have something that they're definitely working in. But I do. My husband and I both are diabetics. And if I get a real low or a real high, I will, after I've tested and see what it is, I will chew on a piece of cotton and get saliva on it. And now I've got frozen clumps of cotton in there so that when I have a diabetic service dog request, I've got stuff to work with. I probably have 2, maybe 3 more litters in me, maybe 4, I don't know, but I'm 71 years old. I'll be 72 in May. I'm old and broken, and I hit the ground a lot of times from big tall horses with small brains.
Heard that.
Yeah. I've got an artificial shoulder, 2 artificial knees, hardware in both feet, and had a broken clavicle and compression fracture of my neck.
Oh gosh. Well, you're all rebuilt then.
Yeah. I'm bionic. I make a real good shot when I go through the airport and they do the X-ray.
I'm sure you do. It's like Christmas over there with all the little boxes that light up.
Yeah.
It's too funny. In AKC,
Okay.
we're all realtors, and the real estate market collapsed that year. We had no money to spend on showing dogs.
Again, within months, Sterns received a civil traffic infraction filed on February 4th, 2005, based on an offense dated January 27th, 2005. Whatever this third infraction entailed, it was dismissed. On September 6th, 2005, Sterns' 4th traffic ticket would happen. He was 19 years old and still racing that fast yellow car, doing an unlawful speed of 60 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone in the 5,200 block of Conroy Road. By the way, most of these traffic violations happened within miles of his parents' home, valued at $1.3 million. On January 7th, 2006, Sterns received his 5th Florida traffic citation. That speed demon was doing 68 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone. Curiously, he was stopped near Stony Brook West Parkway and English Garden Lane, very close to Lake Whitney Elementary School. He had to come up with $260.50 to get out of that one. The very next month, on February 27th, 2006, Sterns was once again caught doing an unlawful speed, traveling 59 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone. This would be his 6th ticket. Already listed as a 6'2" tall 19-year-old, Sterns caught a fine for driving that yellow car too fast in the 12000 block of East Stony Brook Parkway at Florida 429 Road, perhaps the same area as his previous ticket. The $205.50 fine was paid and the case satisfied by March 30th, 2006. However, money problems would still arise and the moving violations would eventually lead to Sterns losing his license. More money issues in the family would be peppered in this era. In an action dated October 27, 2006, Best Cleaners Incorporated claimed that Sterns' mom owed more than $400 for services rendered, and by January 23, 2007, when Sterns was 20 years old, he received his 7th ticket. This time, Sterns was racing at 79 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone on State Route 528 at US 441, still driving that yellow Mitsubishi. Sterns paid another couple of $100 to get out of this one, perhaps thinking that throwing money at his problems would solve everything. However, the country club came a-calling. On February 20th, 2007, the company known as CCC GBI Keens Point LP, also doing business as the Golden Bear Club at Keens Point, filed a breach of agreement contract against the Sterns family. Even the younger Sterns' name would show up in court filings regarding payments owed. Eventually, this action would be closed, but one wonders if they weren't living above their means. Meanwhile, the teenage Sterns got himself another fine worth a couple of $100. But this time, by February 26, 2007, a driver's license suspension was issued. Perhaps all of those speeding violations finally caught up with him, but he didn't stop driving recklessly, and his family's money woes continued. On March 5, 2008, Capital One Bank sued Sterns' mom for breach of contract, claiming she owed $3,182.61 for a credit card balance. That action was closed, but it's the same kind of trouble the young Sterns would find himself eventually ducking. By November 21, 2008, Sterns was 22 years of age, and once again in trouble for his driving, collecting his 8th ticket. This time he failed to yield to oncoming traffic when making a left turn and caused a crash. This happened in the area of State Road 50 and Wind Tree Lane. Thankfully, the crash did not cause injuries or fatalities, but Sterns did cause $9,500 worth of property damage. A driver's license suspension was issued. Ironically, he still owes $23 from his fines for this infraction. It was time to say goodbye to the yellow car. By the time he'd get his next moving violation, Sterns would be driving a different vehicle. In the meantime, by 2009, Sterns moved onto social media, bragging about his party antics, posting as Sustané on Twitter at 3:53 p.m. on April 21st, 2009, he tweeted, "Head still spinning from last night's shenanigans. Chug a couple vitamin waters, go out and do it again. Just another day in paradise." He would turn 23 years old 4 days later. Sterns really gives off the vibes of a stuck-up little rich boy, a guy trying to drown his problems in alcohol and fast cars. Sterns was driving a 2002 light gray 4-door Volvo when he got his 9th ticket. On June 17, 2009, he was clocked speeding on a county road going 59 miles per hour in a 40 mile per hour zone, although actual speed says 49 miles per hour. This time, Sterns was at Magnolia Park Court and County Road 535, once again very close to his home. He got a $111 fine. Stearns continued his partying ways and random social media appearances. He appeared dressed as an inmate in orange in a Facebook photo dated October 26, 2009. Finally, Stearns seemed to not get stopped by the cops in Orange County for a few years. It was August 13, 2013, when Stearns was 27 years old, that he received his 10th traffic ticket. This time, Stearns was stopped in a new 2012 gray four-door Honda going 53 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone. He incurred a $250 civil penalty for that infraction. What's ironic is that Stearns' dad paid the $254 fee for his nearly 30-year-old son. This time, the citation noted that Stearns lived in a different home. Perhaps his family had downsized from their McMansions, but it doesn't appear that he lived alone. Ironically, it was the same 3-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom house worth about $384,000 that is associated with his parents that represents the exact same address that a creditor attempted to serve Stearns at years later. More on that in a second. August 16, 2016 was the day Stearns joined Reddit, his cake day, as the prolific user named Sustene. Sustene is a Latin word that translates to support, check, put off, put up with, sustain, or hold back in English. It can also mean bear, withstand, or tolerate. Also, that was notably his parents' 30th wedding anniversary. It seems this became his favorite public platform, but unfortunately, we can only see comments from as old as 2 years ago. On Wednesday, March 21st, 2018, Stearns posted his first post on Reddit in the Boosted Boards community, bragging about buying an electric board and getting his first grown-up job. He wrote, "Just bought into Boosted. I have been wanting an electric board for a long time. Finally got a grown-up job with some disposable income and decided to revisit the idea of electric boards, did some research, came to the conclusion that Boosted made a good, reliable product with a decent rep. Their spring sale was too much temptation to pass up. It arrived today, and after running it through 3 battery cycles, I have to say this thing is an absolute blast. Kicking myself for not pulling the trigger on this sooner. I can't wait for my extended range battery to arrive." Smiley face. Stearns kept his childlike interest in electronic toys even while posting on social media about getting his first grown-up job. As a 32-year-old man in 2018 when he published his first Reddit post, whether Stearns was referencing a job at Disney or as a realtor or some other job is beyond me. But 2018 is the year he reportedly began dating Jennifer. Did she encourage him to get a real job? Did she get him a job at Disney? 8 months later, on November 10th, 2018, Stearns appeared in an Instagram video with Jennifer at the Sunken Gardens. Did he woo her with his childlike interest in toys and games, appearing to be the perfect would-be youthful father? Stearns' very own lawsuit. It would be 7 years after his last known traffic infraction that Stearns would be sued in small claims court. On December 7th, 2020, Midland Credit Management Incorporated versus Stephan Sterns was filed. Although the case was initiated that day, eventually the pretrial hearings would be canceled because the summons for Stearns was returned unserved. Midland Credit Management is an American debt buyer and debt collection company. When they tried to serve Stearns at a house in Windermere, Florida, a resident there said Stearns was a subject unknown. He didn't live at that address anymore. That makes sense because Stearns was likely living with Jennifer and Maddie starting in 2018 or so. According to court documents, Stearns owed his 5th Third Bank credit card more than $3,700. Back on July 31st, 2019, the account had been charged off and a resulting balance became due. Included in the lawsuit was a statement for a Trio MasterCard credit card that the court document said was not paid off. Sterns likely put all of those traffic woes and lawsuit problems in the back of his mind after he met Jennifer and became fixated on her young daughter, Madeline. Maybe Jen saw Sterns as a savior of sorts. Court records show that Jennifer had been through her own drama with Maddie's biological dad. A case filed on June 3, 2011, only 4 months after Maddie was born, shows a case type of paternity DOR requested, which typically means that a case is being sought to establish paternity and child support. The case may also set time sharing and parental responsibility if the child has jurisdiction over the DOR. Although the details are private, there's a long list of court entries of exhibits, financial affidavits, an order for income deduction, a final judgment, a certified notice of delinquent support, and 5 entries of Department of Revenue intercept credits. The last one sadly dated March 13th, 2024, after Maddie went to heaven. Meanwhile, 5 years ago, Sterns would perhaps travel with Jennifer on September 4th, 2019, to the Big Apple, where she was born, when he visited the Halal Guys food truck in New York and bragged about their delicious spicy lamb with rice. He seemed to go straight from his mom and dad's home to living with his girlfriend and her daughter, never moving on to the maturity of marriage, responsible fatherhood, or other pursuits. I can understand why Sterns may have avoided marriage to any woman, especially after witnessing what his parents went through. Was he treated like a pawn or ignored and took that out on the world? It's a really odd victim mentality that Sterns displayed during transport as he complained about his core body temperature dropping so low and having to sleep on metal or concrete with only a toilet paper roll as a pillow. You think they're supposed to do something like that? Sterns asked Officer Cabrera, totally ignoring the horrific treatment he's accused of imposing on 13-year-old Maddie.
Don't know why they don't do that. Why don't they just kind of like at least give you a blanket,
My core temperature was down. By the time they took it, it was like a degree or 2 lower than it should have been.
Wow.
Couldn't regulate. I was sleeping on bare metal. The first night I was on a concrete floor with a roll of toilet paper for a pillow and nothing else. Begging for a blanket or a pad to sleep on for like 2 days. Didn't think they were supposed to do stuff like that.
Oof. That sounds rough, man. They're not too tight, are they? You're welcome.
Don't get me wrong, there's nothing bad about any of us adults holding on to a childlike wonder about the world and playing fun games, but there is something very wrong with anyone turning a bad childhood into an adulthood that inflicts pain on children. But Sterns couldn't see his own hypocrisy, or certainly not acknowledge it in a public forum. Hopefully by this point, Sterns is at least confessing his sins to God. The most hypocritical belief system that Sterns held can be witnessed in his answer to a question from July 6th, 2022, when a Reddit user asked, "What do you think is the scariest thing mankind has created?" Sterns answered, religion, the desire and willingness to follow anything so blindly that you are willing to do terrible, awful things in the absolute belief that you are right for doing it, or to dictate to anyone else how they should live based on your own beliefs. Sterns may have rightly eschewed the so-called legalistic man-made religion, as he called it, but obviously throwing away an authentic, life-saving relationship with Jesus Christ opened Sterns up to all kinds of evil. His cabal of controversial child material and evidence of wrongdoing against the young girl who experienced Sterns's terrible, awful things was finally coming to an end. Things done in secret will be shouted from the rooftops, wrote Luke the physician, and if Sterns were smart enough to crack open the Bible, that he dist and soak up the wisdom of Scripture. Instead of pontificating on Reddit, he may have read the writing on the wall, that his very soul would soon be required of him. his present, whereas other men who are 38 years of age, like Sterns, will be on April 25th, 2024, are likely dealing with the responsibilities of full-time careers, wives, raising their young children, and all the duties that come along with being responsible, hardworking homeowners. Stearns still seemed lost in the sauce of digital toys and online rants. On June 14th, 2023, Stearns posted on Reddit a comment that made it appear as though he was considerate to children, and that he took the feelings of young girls into account. It was a cringe-worthy reply in the Walt Disney World subreddit. He wrote, "As a cast member, I will only call young girls princess when they are literally dressed up like a princess. I figure they aren't dressed up to not be recognized for it, LOL. Otherwise, if I need the parents to help with a lap restraint or something, I'll say the young one or little one or our young friend. It really depends on the situation and context." The month after that comment, Stearns was captured in the YouTube video titled "Journey into Imagination with Figment Ride." Epcot 360 POV, dated July 29th, 2023, welcoming guests into the area. It's on brand that a guy like Stearns would choose a career where he would be close to children, given the heinous charges against him currently. Did his real estate career not work out for him? Stearns' friends have mentioned that he didn't seem to work often, but always had money. What was his exact source of income? A man with a personality and proclivities like Stearns working in Disneyland is akin to the seemingly innocent and heroic Disney character Peter Pan, the leader of the Lost Boys. When you take a deeper look at the original makeup of the misleading character, he's actually quite ominous to children, at least in one author's mind. Stephanie Gelsey wrote an article for Impact News titled "Why Peter Pan is a Creep." She took a second look as an adult at Peter Pan, a beloved Disney character, and surmised that he was a creepy, sinister pedo. While a small child, I embraced all things Disney and was excited at the thought of watching the films. Stephanie mused, "Then I grew up and realized that most things Disney are a little bit sadistic. While there are villains in almost all Disney films, the real villain in this film is Peter." Stephanie goes on to describe the idea of a shadow figure sneaking into the children's room to play and whisk them off to a land of adventure. I couldn't help but remember the photo on Halloween Day 2020 that Stearns posted of a 9-year-old Maddie to Reddit showing off a toy she had painted. It was pretty bold of him to post that photo, knowing what was being hidden in the shadows. Peter Pan, the shadowy figure, practiced breaking and entering into a room full of children to steal them from their parents, using fairy dust to help children fly like him. In the play and book, Peter symbolizes the selfishness of childhood. He is forgetful, self-centered, and self-congratulatory. These attributes remind me of Stearns' nonchalant, devil-may-care, cocky attitude, especially when it comes to putting himself and others in danger. Did Stearns selfishly feel like he deserved Maddie? I've seen other cases whereby men who suffered their own abuse or neglect when they were boys grew up to be dangerous guys who felt like vulnerable children were theirs for the taking. Stephanie wrote, "The idea of fairy dust is a sweet idea when you are young, but as you get older and start experimenting with things, you begin to realize the connections." He also throws the fairy dust on the children with no warning, even if they didn't want it. It is peer pressure, a trait children are not supposed to succumb to. Peter attempts to abduct the children and keep them in Neverland forever. Stephanie continued, "I am not a detective, but I have seen enough Lifetime Women's films to know that Neverland is code for the basement your abductor will keep you in forever and do weird, freaky things to you. I do, however, know that there is no limitation to Peter Pan's age, which makes this even worse for his case. Peter Pan growing up in Neverland prevented him from getting old, which in turn kept him as a young boy for God knows how long. It may have fooled me when I was little, but now I understand that Peter Pan could potentially be a 60-year-old man kidnapping children. I just had to pass along Stephanie's take on the beloved yet misleading story of Peter Pan and how she grew to realize that perhaps he was the real enemy and not Captain Hook. Like Peter, Sterns reminds me of the I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid kind of guy who may initially fool a single mom like Jennifer into thinking he'd make a great surrogate dad, full of fun and digital toys and excitement. Maybe Jennifer was blinded by Sterns's immature Peter Pan syndrome. Worse yet, maybe she knew exactly who he was. As a result, on Monday, February 26th, 2024, Maddie Soto went missing, and ultimately, Sterns was arrested for his actions against her. As for the latest updates in his case of this recording, an entry dated March 25th, 2024 in Sterns's court docket lists a notice of provision of witness list, which simply means the state or defense has provided a list of witnesses that have knowledge of the allegations. Another entry in Sterns's court record dated March 25th, 2024 simply reads, Mail returned. Is Sterns already getting love letters from crazy fangirls? Like the ones who wrote Chris Watts. Stay tuned for that discovery someday. On Thursday, April 4th, 2024, regarding my request for Maddie's autopsy, I received the following reply from the Administrative Office Coordinator out of the District 9 Medical Examiner's Office. Public Records Exemption. Domestic violence, death of a minor. Me 240403, Madeline Soto. Dear Paula Mooney, please be advised that the autopsy report you requested is unavailable for release. Under Florida statute, Chapter 406.135, 2b, the autopsy report of a minor whose death was related to an act of domestic violence held by a medical examiner is confidential and exempt from S. 119.071 and S. 24A, Article 1 of the State Constitution. Respectfully, his future. Sterns' mom will be 72 in May 2024. Just like she told the podcasters, both her and her husband have diabetes. His dad will be 73. If Sterns is indeed the only child of his parents, it's not clear how much support he will have over the years if he serves decades in prison. Will Jen visit him ever or join him in serving time if she had guilty knowledge? His dad has visited Sterns in jail, and there was at least one phone call entry from him. But how much support will these older parents be willing to shed on their only beleaguered son? It reminds me of the aging parents of Brian Koberger, folks who likely looked forward to retiring in peace and living out their golden years in the sun. Instead, the family members of those accused of heinous crimes are often unwittingly dragged into the spotlight due to the actions of their sons. People want to know every detail about how they were raised and what went wrong, and what will become of those sons like Sterns. Lengthy trials, lots of controversy, and guilty verdicts. Will we ever be able to understand a man like Sterns and how to catch or prevent the next one from ever forming? These are the reasons I like to take these deep dives into the history of alleged perpetrators. Not to give them any glory, but to prevent future victims from suffering. I truly want to know what went wrong and how to stop it. I really want us all to recognize the red flags and figure out what kind of counseling or treatments could actually cure these ills and prevent pedos from acting on their crazy thoughts. Noting these red flags can teach parents about the types of folks to keep far away from kids. It's worth it to understand in order to save other children from enduring what Maddie suffered. I refuse to bow down to the voices attempting to normalize this type of behavior that Sterns practiced. It's just flat out wrong. The parable of the rich fool comes to mind as an adequate closing lesson after taking an intense look at the facade of Florida wealth and California coolness that Sterns wore like a mask. Luke 12:13 through 21, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me judge or executor between you?" And he said to them, "Watch out. Guard yourselves against every form of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." Then he told them a parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced an abundance. So he thought to himself, "What shall I do, since I have nowhere to store my crops?" Then he said, "This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and will build bigger ones, and there I will store up all my grain and my goods. Then I will say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be required of you. Then who will own what you have accumulated? This is how it will be for anyone who stores up treasure for himself but is not rich toward God."